You're back on the air with the Restaurant Broker. Remember, today's show is sponsored in part by Today's Restaurant News, the food service industry newspaper, and one of our sponsors. Today's Restaurant is the trade newspaper for the food service industry in Georgia and Florida.
We have been talking to some experts today about restaurant leasing, and we always like to zero in on the numbers. So let's dive right back in with Jesse. Just can you give us some data on how sales per square foot and for all retail is trending based on the ICSC data currently?
Well, I have sales per square foot for malls, and then I can also give you some chain store sales, which we also track, and how those are doing. Mall sales productivity right now is, at one of the highest points it's been. It's at $468 a square foot. That's for U.S. malls, both regional and super regional that we've discussed. That's up from $455 a square foot last year.
Wow, those are big numbers. I started my life in the retail business, and that's a number we always strive to get past, that $450 per square foot number.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the last time that we were, up over 400 was back in 2008. So 2009, 2010, there was a dip, and then 11, we got back to over $400, a square foot. And that shot up, like I said, to 468 right now for all of last year. So that's a pretty good number. Chain store sales also doing reasonably well, considering, and the considering is really the weather. It's been a pretty tough winter in many, many parts of this country, obviously the Northeast and parts of the Midwest, but even in the South, and you guys in Atlanta can talk about that, we've seen some pretty nasty ice storms and things like that have really kind of curtailed some the consumers' ability and willingness really to shop. We anticipate that March is going to be about equal, maybe up around 3% increase for that month. And then we're really going to see a boost in April as Easter can really be a catalyst for spring apparel. Easter is now in April this year, 3 weeks later than it was last year. Last March was very strong because of that Easter boost. So we think that that's going to happen now in April. Hopefully some warmer weather. Consumers start thinking about spring apparel and, dare I even say bathing suits and summer.
Alan, let's start with you just to weigh in. If somebody has a restaurant coming up for lease renewal, okay, we've been talking about this supply and demand issue and the fact that rates are kind of edging on the way up. What should they be looking for? If they come looking for a rent reduction, they've been your tenant for 10 years, they've paid every month on time, what you going to tell them?
Well, again, going back to market specific, I hate to keep using those words, but it's so market specific. The first thing we ask of an existing restaurant is to share their sales. If they're not already reporting sales, we're going to ask them to report their sales, preferably profit and loss, so we can see what they're doing, actually doing the real numbers. Many times restaurants underreport, or they take out, the owners take out a large portion, so you don't see a big profitability. So it's important that we look at the numbers and understand it. It's also important to know what else is available in the market. So we scour the market to understand what other rates, what other landlords are quoting. But getting back to your question, what do we do? It really depends on the restaurant. Look at their occupancy costs is something that's very important that we look at. We can discuss that probably at a later show. But it's how important is that restaurant to the shopping center? Are they profitable? And we go from there as far as, do we offer them a rent reduction? It's possible, but as sales continue to pick up and the market gets stronger, it's less likely.
And you're also going to ask them to potentially do a refresh on their concept, correct?
Correct. And when we do that, it depends on the state of their restaurant. How does it look? And typically, the landlord will consider helping them out with. Let's say they give a 5-year renewal back to us, to the landlord, then maybe the landlord will give them some money to help them refresh the restaurant.
That's great.
When do you see anything like that right now happening? When you do lease renewals or even new leases, are you seeing some more demands from the landlords and not as generous as it was a few years back?
Yes, and as a short word, yeah. I mean, the tenant improvement dollars are nowhere near what they used to be, and I think certainly some of that contributed to the problems with the shopping centers as a whole. They were giving away too much money for concepts that were not going to be successful. We're seeing tenant improvement dollars that are, a couple of my clients are guaranteeing the tenant improvement dollars in lieu of guaranteeing a 5 or 10 year lease, which has been able to help a couple of people get, and the landlords and the tenant get comfortable with each other.
Good.
Right.
Hey, Jesse, we're as restaurant brokers, we have a lot of requests every day for different kind of space, different like that, and we've been established for over a decade. For a long period of time, we had a lot of calls. People wanted to be in the food courts and indoor malls and everything like that. And, we know these rental rates were really high in these areas, but they were great places. But in the last few years, we have not seen a lot of demand for that. Do you see what's going on with the food courts today in the actual old typical malls? Do you see that as still a lot of a viable hot topic for you guys, or this is something that's trending a little down as far as foot traffic goes?
Well, I don't know about in terms of foot traffic. I think it's probably just fine, and I think that for the most part, the food court is still an incredibly viable option. It's just that I think malls, in particular, have been looking to make additions outside of the food court in their dining options, whether that's a chef-inspired concept, a larger chain sit-down restaurant, or a cafe-style, concept. I think those are the kinds of things that the mall developers and owners are really looking at as far as a value add to the consumer base.
Okay, I don't think you could have given anyone any better advice than those words. That capital, the cash really is king when it comes to a landlord. And we work and counsel lots of folks and encourage them to bring other parties to the table to work with them so that they can fund their dream. We've been talking today about leasing a restaurant space with some experts in the industry, Jesse Tron from the ICSC, Alan Shaw from the Shopping Center Group, and Wayne Taliaferro from We Sell Restaurants. Remember, these are the restaurant brokers. You can find us online at WeSellRestaurants.com. Take a moment and like us on Facebook this week. We are your industry authority and resource for all information in the restaurant industry. Eric and Robin Gagnon, and we'll be back after this break.